Director, producer Baltasar Kormákur.
Hi, nice to see you. Thanks for staying.
I don't know, I cried so much when I watched the film. I know there's somebody in this room is wiping them, drying the tears right now. Baltasar, take us into the origin of this film for you, because you have had such a long and varied career. A lot of people here stateside know you for your action movies. You've made action, thriller, a noir even. You've made comedies. You've made a killer lion movie and survival dramas. And this is such a beautiful romantic story.
That sounds like a psychopath when you...
No, you just contain multitudes. This was based on a novel that came out in 2020. You were gifted the novel, and then what happened?
Yeah, my daughter actually gave me the novel, which was one of these gifts that I keep giving, you know. And she gave it for me for Christmas. It's a tradition in Iceland to give books for Christmas. And I read it, I started reading, and I couldn't put it down, to be honest. And there was something about, it lured me in very slowly, and it didn't, I didn't think much about it in the beginning, but just started drawing me in. And then I realized I was just suddenly in this whole world of this adventure between the two of them, and then dragging me into the tragedy of Hiroshima, and I just didn't see that coming. And I loved that the obstacle of their love story was something that I hadn't heard about, so I was learning about it. I love movies. I remember when I was a kid and I saw Witness. I don't know, maybe some people here remember that. And I had never seen Amish people, and I heard about Amish people. And it was a great thriller, a genre film, but it just gave me an extra layer of something. And also like Burning Mississippi, learn about the racism in the South, stuff like that. It's just, I love films that entertain you and give you a ride that you can enjoy the film, but at the same time there is an extra layer to it that gives you something more.
So you read the book, you loved it, you wanted to adapt it, and then you made a call. You made a call to the novelist, the author of the book, Oliver Johan Olsson. And what did you ask him?
I was like 24 hours after I read, got the book. I called him and I suggested that we should do a script together on it. And there is a rule in filmmaking, as maybe a lot of people know here. There is no animals, don't work with animals, not with children, and not with novelists. Because it's usually a disaster, And I had actually tried it. I tried to do it twice, and I had to abandon both of the project because the novelist didn't want to write the movie I wanted to shoot, and I didn't want to shoot the movie that they were writing. So it just didn't work. But, I'm stubborn, so I tried it once more, and this time it actually turned out to be one of my favorite experiences with a writer, not a novelist only, with a writer, co-writer. And he was very generous in the way we approached it, because he said, it's your film, I just want to make you happy, and we figured it out together. So a lot of the ideas of the changes will be kind of changed from the book are my ideas, and he worked on that with me. So it was kind of also a nice kind of way of keeping the soul of the book, which is actually what I fell for. And when I make stories from books, I don't necessarily try to adapt them, they're exactly the same, but the integrity of the book it has to be there. Also when I make films about real people, I don't take real people and make something that doesn't fit with them. I take the integrity of the person and I try to get close to that. But of course, sometimes you have to do things, but not sacrifice the integrity.
So when you envisioned this book as a film, did you have in mind the way that you would jump between timelines, the way that you would edit, the way that you parse out details that we then will discover in the next scene and the next scene?
No, not as much. I mean, the book is not, in some way, it has that element, of course, but it floats more around. It's not as much those two time periods. There are more things that happen when he tells about which happens in between. Not so much necessarily about his marriage, but about other things. So which I didn't think was necessary in the movie. So, and by the way, it's already 2 hours. So if you shoot the whole book, it would be like 5 hours. So you have to, for the grace of God, you have to cut some of it out, And for me, it was very clear. Usually, when I start with those kind of when I see a book, I pretty much know what I need to do. There is a center, there's a thing that I grab onto, and I kind of really quickly know what is not necessary to be there. Of course, then there is a lot of work, but the direction is I think I've never approached the book if I don't have that idea.
We meet these two wonderful characters who are played by four wonderful actors. But the first one we meet, our protagonist, is played by Egil Olafsson. I'm assuming, is that no relation to the author?
No.
No relation.
They don't have the same father, no. It's a very common name in Iceland. Oliver. Everyone is named Jon or Oliver. And if they're not Jon or Oliver, they're Oliver Jonsson or Jon Olafsson. So it's a very common. We have name culture that everyone is named after the father.
And Egil is a very, very well-known musician himself. I mean, we see him sing in the film, which is a real treat. But he's a beautiful singer. He's a musician and actor. How did you come to cast him in this role, and what did you find about that casting that surprised you, that deepened the connection that both of you had to the character?
So Egil has been a legend in Iceland since I was a kid, both in cinema and screen. He was this grand kind of singer and a sex symbol, actually. Women swooned over him, and still do, And he was kind of a big guy and a lot of testosterone and a bit cocky, and so I wasn't a big fan in the sense of acting, but when he got older, I started liking more his style, And I think when this testosterone goes down, often these kind of people get better, Testosterone doesn't help in acting, You need a bit of the opposite, for sensitivity. And he had played in a TV series that I was the creator of, called Trapped, in the third season of it. And Trapped it's on Netflix, actually, the third season. And he played it like a guru, And there was something that changed in him, a lot. And when I was approaching the role, what happens, Iceland is a very small country, as you might know. We have about 400,000 people there. And when I announce I'm going to make a film out of a book that everyone knows, it becomes like a thing in the media, who's going to cast, who's going to play this Christopher. And there was some names thrown into the hat, but nobody thought of Egil. But there was something, after I had worked with him, it just stuck with me. He had changed his demeanor, he was much more calm and much more charming in that way for me. But I didn't know one of the reasons that he had been diagnosed with Parkinson plus. And when I approached him, he told me that. And said, I think, it might be very difficult for you to work with me because after a certain amount of time, I can't really do anything. My voice goes away, you see, it's a very raspy voice. And his physique, he has, when you have Parkinson plus, it's just like standing up is a pain, And I thought about it, and then I said, I actually think it might just deepen the whole thing, I think it's worth it. And I think we should go for it. And I will find a way to allow for more time, like in Japan, because it's in every frame. I have to say though, and he always took it well, but when I had him in a Japanese restaurant, when he meets Kutaragi, the widower in Japan, he's speaking in 3 languages. I've traveled him across the world, he's speaking in 3 languages, and he is eating with chopsticks with his left hand, and he's right-handed, and he has Parkinson plus. It's like, how can you do that to a person? It's a horrible director. And the reason is because the younger version of him is left-handed, and he was chopping up so much vegetables and doing stuff with his hands that he was going to cut off his fingers if I would have, put the knife in his right hand. But I didn't think about that scene that he would have to be, but he pulled it off, you know, with a smile, you know, and he got one bit.
On top of that, that scene you're talking about where they meet in the restaurant, then they go to the bar and do my favorite pastime, karaoke. You filmed that on location in this famous area called the Golden Guy, if anybody has heard of this. It's an amazing place. Alleyways of tiny, tiny bars.
Tiny, and it's owned by the mafia, most of it. It's a really complicated to get permissions to shoot there. Let's put it that way.
Let alone,
yeah,
let
a
alone,
lot of corners.
let alone fit a film crew.
Yeah, let alone for film crew, and it's really Tokyo, as wonderful as Tokyo is one of the most complicated cities to shoot in.
I want to come back to that, but first I want to go back to talk about the actors, the other actors that you have along with Egil. You mentioned the younger version of Christopher. It's an amazing actor named Baltasar Kormákur. No relation? Or is there a relation? Tell us about,
What do you
about
think?
this guy.
Do we look alike? So, I'm going to tell you the true version of it. Yeah, it's very nepo, you know. but here's my son. I have a lot of them, by the way, so it's already competition between them because I have 3 sons in a similar age bracket. But when we were casting this film, and I had 2 casting directors, one in Japan and one in Iceland, and Selma Björnsdóttir, who is a famous singer actually and Eurovision star, is my casting director. I don't know if you know the Eurovision contest. This is famous in Europe. You know, she came in second, I think, in the competition, and now she's a casting director. That's Iceland for you. And so we kind of exhausted the young men in Iceland, the actors, and in the school, the ones in the drama school, the ones who played a little bit, because it's a tricky age, you know. I didn't want him to be too close to 30, which most people are in Iceland when they exit drama school. I wanted him to be very young and vulnerable, and I wanted to be able to be visible. So we train all these kids, and one thing is, it's tricky today when you're making a 70s period film, and his part is all in that period. A lot of the kids today they look like jockeys, you know. They've been in the gym since they were like 12, you know, and pumping up. So they just don't have the physique that I was looking for. But anyway, so Selma says to me, "What about your sons?" And I have two of them. You know, I have Stormer, like Storm is my youngest one, and he's been acting in quite a bit of films. And I say he's not right for it. He's just a dude, you know. He's not the right type for this character. And she says, "What about Palmy?" I said, "Well, forget about him. He doesn't want to act at all. You know, he's never. He did one small part in a film called The Deep that I did. And he opened the door and said, 'Oh, there's a drunk man, Mama.' You know, that was it. His part. And he wasn't particularly good in the part, to be honest. You know, so I didn't think much of it. You know, but I said to her, you know, please, you get the no, because I don't want to take responsibility for saying no for my children. You know, and you get to know, and I also don't want to get called from the psychiatrist when he's 40, and you know, he's telling that you know I deprived him of opportunities, you know. So she does that, and I didn't think more about it. And suddenly I'm just in my office working, and Palmy comes, and I was like, "Well, are we meeting? Are we taking lunch together today? Or did I forget something?" "No, you asked me to come to audition for your movie." I was like, "And you can do it?" I said, yeah. I want to get over my kind of anxieties about. I always say no to everything. I'm scared of things. I don't want to put myself out. I want to, you know. So he wasn't really looking, to be honest. He wasn't looking to get the part. He just wanted to use me as a psychiatry test, you know, just to get over himself. And then he just killed it in the audition, and I didn't see it coming. And when I saw the audition, I was like, "Fuck, I have a problem." You know, now I have to go down the Nepo road, you know. and it's not very pleasant, you know, to be honest, because then I have to have long speeches like this every time I ask about it. And then I decided to do the right thing, and I sent Focus and my co-producers and the author of the book. No one knew Palmy. Palmy is totally unknown in Iceland. And with other casting tapes, and it was a unanimous decision, you know. So. There you go. I know it's a long story, but this is the. And I also want to add, I want to say, which is really important to me, casting in a film is immensely important to have it right. But what is more important to me is not to put my son in something that he shouldn't be in because it might affect his life in a wrong way. Because I do care more about his life than my film, to be honest. And this way, because that's the last thing, you all know how Sofia Coppola had to deal with after Godfather 3, It is not very pleasant.
That's lovely. That's a good parenting advice.
Yeah, if you don't necessarily have to cast your kids in a movie, don't do it.
Well, so that takes care of your two Christophers.
Yeah.
Your two Mikos are also fantastic. We have,
Great.
as the younger Miko in the earlier timeline, we have a fantastic actress named Koki, who had really not done very much yet at that point in terms of acting.
She's a total find, and I think she had done a small role in Japan. And I actually, my agent or Range Media who present me now, they send me pictures of some Japanese girls, because I needed to find a Japanese girl who was both be able to have authentic Japanese language at her hand and speak English like she'd lived in England for a while. And that is a very small part of actors. And we were, Yoko Narahashi, she was the casting director, and she was sending me a lot of tapes, but we didn't find it. So I had remembered that there was one girl who, half a year ago had been sent to me that had caught my eye, but I had kind of forgotten about it. So I went back in my emails and looked, and there I found her. So I asked my casting director, can you find this girl and audition her? And there was no question in my mind after that. And I didn't know the Japanese people here, or Japanese with some kind of connection, is that she is the daughter of the most famous two singers in the country, and a big model in Japan as well. I didn't know any of this, I just chose her because I thought it was wonderful.
There's a really cool story also behind the casting of the older Miko, who is played by Yoko Narahashi, who you just mentioned as your casting director.
Yes, so Yoko Narahashi is the casting director of the movie who plays the older Miko. So given what I told you about casting a young girl who speaks English and Japanese, imagine you go to the older version of it, it's almost impossible. The famous actresses and the kind of well-known in Japan do not have English at their hand. And there was some really bad, auditions I had, because they were just couldn't do it, And at the same time, Yoko was always reading Christopher with him. I was like, that's a really good acting, Yeah, that's Yoko, yeah. And she looks wonderful. So like, Yoko, why don't you read for the part? I said, no, I can't, because it's kind of embarrassing for her, because she's calling all these famous actresses, and now she's going to take the part herself. Like, sorry, I got the part. Call you nice, let's come to casting next, no. So she was trying to get away from it, but I said, no, it's my decision. I demand you read from it. And she did, and she brought me and Mike Goodrich to tears, when I got the tapes, and it was the same. And I love this when it's all done on instinct. I just follow my instinct when I cast. I know when it's right, whether it's my son or my casting director or someone famous, and it's because it's such a big part of your directing is to get the right person, especially when they're young, because you don't want to choose an actor that has to go far from his base, because then everything is an effort. You'd rather just want to sit with them and get close to them and see the tweaks in the eyes when they're falling in love, little stares. This is what I love. Because I've said this to people, a face, a close-up of a face is the same size as Mother Earth on the screen. And it's just a good reminder that, like, if you take a picture of the Earth, it takes exactly the same space on screen as a face. And if you look at it that way, there's there's so much in a face, There is like a whole universe in a face.
I love that story about your casting director, because she's like legendary.
And talking about nepotism, her son in the movie is played by her son, and she didn't tell me, I was so happy when I saw her because she looked exactly like Aid. I had no idea she looked like her. I didn't feel like she looked like her at all. So he is half American, half Japanese. They call it Hafu, and it's like wow. And as he told me later, yes, my son. so everyone got to do a little bit of that.
When it came to making sure that your two Christophers and your two Mikos were sort of on the same page, creating these single characters together, did you have them spend time together beforehand?
Yeah. I had the older versions and of them to kind of work together on things that we could remind. I didn't want to do too much effort. I mean, in some ways they don't look that much alike, but that for me was more important to find the right integrity in the character, because I think that's the worst thing you do is to find someone who looks exactly like older Christopher, and then he can't act, and the scenes are not good because I just chose him because of his looks, and I think that's not worth it, to be honest. But also with Koki and like Palme, that was very important. This is always like the most nervous part when you cast. You cast people from two sides of the world, which is very exciting because you have their setting what it is. They are meeting like these people are meeting, and you have to create an atmosphere where chemistry can be created, because you can't hand create chemistry. You can't just force the chemistry, and it doesn't matter how good of a director you are. If your actors can't find it, it won't be there. And for me, it's about creating, the right kind of space and time and the environment that they can actually create. But Palme, because he had never acted and she was gorgeous and he was very nervous when he met her, and they had to kiss. That was the worst part. And he came to me and said, how did it go and how do you feel? And I was like, I had a blackout, Dad. I just can't remember anything. Yeah, I saw you were a bit nervous, So, and I got a little scared that he was kind of, falling back and wouldn't be able to pull it off. But then the first shooting day came, and it was gone. It was almost like he couldn't fake it, with the script and reading and pretending to be in love. He just had to be in love, And then I asked him, please do not go too far with this, because that's the worst thing when actors, take it a step too far, because they, especially in the middle of the production, it can go very wrong.
Sounds like you got some stories.
No, but it's just that, you have to allow it, and it's very tricky when I worked as an actor for a long time myself, and you have to allow yourself, if it's going to be authentic, to fall in love with somebody, but you have to keep it inside the room. You cannot act the finest of emotions, in that sense. When you do this, when you play an evil man, and I did a bit of that, because Icelanders, I'm dark and Icelanders are a bit racist, so they chose me always for the bad guy, and I had to bring out the bad thing in me, the evil part in me, and I call it the balloon effect. It's basically, if we are made of little balloons, like there's good and there's a little bad, there's envy and jealousy and there's a little balloons inside of you. And when you play a certain part, you take those balloons that are appropriate for that character and you blow them up, and they push the others, into the corners. And suddenly you are becoming all the negative parts of yourself. And I remember when I was playing a horrible character when I was young, and my mother said to me, can you not just come for dinner when you're about to play this character? It was a theater, so I was kind of repeating it, because you become such a nasty, and so I'm kind of warming up the balloon at this point, when I'm at my mother's home. And I'm saying this because this is what you have to allow yourself. You have to allow yourself to go in there and live the moment. It's not something you can just practice and create in kind of a technical way. I don't believe in that, not on film at least. And that's why a lot of actors are fuck-ups, because it's true. You're fucking with your psyche your whole life. If you're really going for it. Like Daniel Day-Lewis is stopped acting because of this. It's a real thing. If you start, and for me, I'm not sure I could be doing this every day to day, because when you're younger, it's kind of you don't really know who you are, so it's easier. once you kind of find your grounding and you become a person, it's harder to go away from yourself.
Did you and Palmy learn how to make delicious Japanese meals though?
He did. and also learned Japanese. We were very lucky, and we had a lot of Japanese people helping us. One of them was the chef of the embassy, so the ambassador Japanese, he allowed, because they had to build the restaurant in the studio in Iceland. And every Japanese person in Iceland was called to be an extra.
I was impressed, and honestly, like, I truly did get very hungry watching this film, because it's sensual in multiple ways in terms of the love story, but also the food story. And I loved seeing dishes that were like homemade dishes that I remember my grandmother making. There's a moment when Palmy, as Christopher, is making the Japanese breakfast, and he is very delicately placing an umeboshi, pickled plum, on a dish, and I was like, that is detail, that is effort. I was really impressed by that.
And that's an interesting, because one thing is to make a Japanese restaurant today, another one is to make it 69 and make it authentic 69, and also the Japanese food that we eat today wasn't available in 69, There was much more traditional food, and it was mostly made for Japanese businessmen in London, because there was, of course, there was a lot of, they weren't integrating very much the British people after the war with the Japanese people. There was a hostility between them. So mostly there was some hippies and interested in something new, and businessmen who would be eating there. And we actually found there were 2 or 3 restaurants in this time in Japan, and we found a couple that had been running a Japanese restaurant. They were very old now, and they could give us so much detail and information. So it's and I really love that part of the filmmaking, the chance of giving yourself time to learn and dig in and study and turn every stone you can.
Or even learning about the hibakusha, the term hibakusha, atom bomb survivor, and that grief and trauma.
Yeah, and I went to Hiroshima to the where they have the museum and all this, and they helped us, and it's an incredible story, as everyone knows. And I also want to say that what I loved about this story is the opportunity to take somebody by the hand and say, I'm going to show you one victim of which wasn't even born at the time of the bombing, and rather than go into the kind of the shouting marks and finger pointing, it's Pearl Harbor, and it was ending the war, or whatever it was. I don't want to. That's not the story I'm telling. I'm just telling about, do we really think it's a good idea to use this weapon again, as we are about to do in the Ukrainian-Russian war now, when we and maybe helping and showing people the consequences of it through one victim and focusing on that, the most unexpected, somebody that was in the womb of her mother when it happened. So sometimes when you say things in a gentle way to people, they listen more than when you point and shout, I think.
I'm going to point right now to, I think we're going to have time to try to squeeze in one audience question.